And the clock has just gone over to 7 o'clock, so I will call to order this meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee for the town of St. Andrews. Today is the 21st of August. We're here in the W.C. O'Neill Arena Council chambers. As we look around the table to take attendance, we're all here except for Mr. Tanner, and we have Xander by Zoom, and Paul is here with us as well. As we get started, we recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Peskotomuhkati people, and welcome. Looking for any declarations of conflict of interest, if any exist on this agenda. Oh, I skipped over the agenda approval. Is that why you're staring me down? Sorry about that. I'm going to back up after attendance, approval of the agenda. So we've all had a chance to review. Anyone care to make a motion? Thank you, Councillor Harland, seconder. Mr. Cross, thanks so much. And if there's no discussion, edits, or anything like that, all those in favor of approving this agenda, please signify by saying aye. And there being none opposed, we'll move forward with that agenda. Thank you very much. Any declarations of conflict of interest on tonight's agenda then? No, there being none, we will move forward. Thank you very much. You have a copy of the minutes from way back on June 19th. If anyone would care to make a motion on adopting these minutes. Thank you, Mr. Kerr. Is there a seconder? Mr. Simmons, thank you very much. If there is no discussion, edits, additions, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of adopting the minutes from June 19th signify by saying aye. Aye. And any opposed? There being none, those minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. So our first agenda item tonight is reference number PCD 240702. This is an item to obtain views of our committee on an amendment to the zoning bylaw for PIDs 150-25083, 01326214, and 0132546, all at 236 Mowat Drive. We have received, the town has received a rezoning request for those PIDs, and at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gopin for his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everybody hear me okay?
My apologies, we're having issues with the audio in the back, so there's a couple of cables that are broken, so CHCL is working on it, but hasn't replaced them yet. So go ahead, Xander.
Great. Let me just figure out how to get into the presentation mode. Let's give me 1 second here. Okay, is that coming through?
Yep.
Great. All right. So this is a request by council for views on bylaw Z22-10, which is for 236 Mowat Drive, which is the aforementioned PIDs. And this is kind of what's been referred to as the Mowat Drive pocket community or pocket neighborhood when it's come before council up to this point. So the PIDs are 01325406, 01326214, 15025083, and the address that's generally associated with those is 236 Mowat Drive. All of those PIDs are currently in the serviced residential zone. And in aggregate, they form a 1.52 acre lot with a house and garage. And under the current plans that are being presented tonight, though the house and garage would be demolished and the development would use those spaces. So the development that is involved in the bylaw would be a private road condominium development with 12 detached 2-story dwellings. Condominiums, and it's worth kind of PAC being aware that condominium has a what is kind of used in the media in terms of being like an apartment tower that's sold privately. In New Brunswick, a condominium is a type of property ownership that relates to just a like a dwelling unit as opposed to a fee simple lot. So you can have condominiums that are essentially single unit dwellings, but instead of owning a lot with yards, you own your dwelling, and you have access to common areas through a condominium corporation. That's what a legal condominium is in New Brunswick. Those are only allowed in the MR2 zone, which is essentially a high density apartment zone, and all the properties in the MR2 zone currently are utilized for apartment buildings. So Anchor's Landing and the in Process Compass. So the Condominium Act governs condominiums, requires condominium associations, which are fairly similar to homeowners associations. They are responsible for maintaining the common areas and, in this case, a private road. This has come to council in kind of a few forms before, and we have confirmed to the developers that this is their kind of final desired iteration of the project. The integrated development zone still makes the most sense for this particular iteration, as we're kind of gearing up towards this new municipal plan and zoning bylaw. The integrated development zone can act as a bit of a placeholder until we get to that new bylaw. This may be the type of development that would be allowed in that new bylaw by right, but given that we're in the current Z2201, it's a bit of a just doesn't fit into the current bylaw regime. So with the integrated development zone, it's what's being used currently for the Algonquin rezoning for the spa and O'Brien House. There were so many issues with the current zoning bylaw for those properties that instead of trying to fit it into a current zone, instead of trying to create a new zone, given that a new bylaw is coming in the fairly near future within the next year or so, using this almost placeholder zone in that meantime made the most sense for that project. This one is fairly similar, where it's so far outside the scope of a current bylaw. If council does wish to consider it, this makes the most sense. And with the integrated development zone, this is under the Community Planning Act, you create conditions through development agreements or resolutions of council. So those conditions can include many things that are included in a subdivision agreement or a traditional development agreement. So design, stormwater management, screening, etc. So those are very important aspects of the integrated development zone. And just like with the previous projects considered for that zone, I think it's important for PAC and their views to consider what conditions make sense to apply to the project if the project is considered one that is in the public interest and meets municipal plan and various provincial regulations. So a bit of background and sort of overview of the area and the property itself. It's on Mowat Drive. You can see the 3 PIDs here. 2 of them are smaller. And one of the reasons why this project has changed a little bit over time is that the developers acquired this PID here much larger than the 2 original ones. So it gave them a much greater opportunity for development. And these are the structures that would be demolished here, this house and garage. And again, this is just another aerial view without the zoning. Some site photos, including aerial views as it currently is, not that different from the GONB imagery. And here we get to the site plan that is proposed. And one of the, I guess, unique things about this development, and one of the reasons it requires some flexibility in bylaw if council deems it appropriate to be approved, is it's a very pedestrian-oriented neighborhood. Council is aware that there are currently no sidewalks on the side of the street. There are some on Mowat, at least right up to the Tim Hortons. So council is aware of that. They have considerations around new sidewalks, new infrastructure. But the idea with this is the parking is communal and units are accessed via paths. And that's something that has kind of shifted back and forth with this project. It's a bit more of an urban style development, but there's still space for vehicles. They're just not as prominently placed as other developments may be. So it is a pedestrian-oriented development with common spaces managed through the condominium association, as I mentioned before, condominium corporation, as well as this private road. Access would still be maintained for the properties that currently use that private road. It's not the municipality's responsibility to maintain private accesses, but legally, the properties that currently have access do need to maintain access. And just because the development moves ahead doesn't mean that their rights to access can be extinguished. So that is important, and I don't think the developers have any intention to not allow access to those properties. So again, some photos or some renderings of the site, so different angles. And I know in previous iterations of the project, there's been some different colorings of the dwellings, and it kind of lends a jelly bean style effect to the houses, which is a classic maritime vernacular. Could be something to consider in terms of conditions. But again, just more renderings of the site as it could look with some of the common pedestrian areas. And part of the idea with this style of development too is really to promote a community feel, and the condominium association does provide some opportunities for that, and the common areas certainly help. So in terms of legislation for this project, the statements of public interest are regulation of the Community Planning Act. One of them that is particularly relevant in this case is to promote a range of housing options, such as size, type, density, and design. And straight from the user guide for these statements, planning documents should consider inclusive neighborhoods, including special housing communities, e.g. tiny homes in close proximity to services and other residential neighborhoods. These aren't, the footprint of the homes has expanded a little bit through the iterations of this project, but they're still, a fairly dense style of neighborhood, and they are within walking distance of amenities. The municipality's plan, one of the policies regarding environment and climate change, council shall support efficient and sustainable land use and development patterns and a mix of uses and densities that support pedestrian movement and that improve energy efficiency where feasible and appropriate. And a housing policy, it shall be a policy of council to understand the need for the development of housing to meet the needs of seniors, students, and other special needs populations. Council shall ensure that new or converted housing for these populations is appropriate to the character of the town. And these smaller ownership units, they're ideally going to be in the affordable range, and maybe with some federal funding assistance. There's currently HAF applications. There may be opportunities to for the municipality to help out with all sorts of housing projects to make them more affordable. Missing middle with this type of density. They're needed in town. There's been a lot of progress in housing goals for the community, but it's growing significantly. And a lot of the growth in dwelling units that are in the development pipeline have been apartments. And people do desire, these different types of units that, while in the case of a condo association, it's not necessarily that you own the space around your home, but it's not quite the same as an apartment where your unit is really confined to the walls that are around it. And this type of development has been successful in other communities. It would be the first of its kind for St. Andrews, and that's one of the reasons why it's coming before council and PAC, because it just is so far outside of what was considered in the zoning bylaw at the time it was developed. PAC, your views have been requested by council. You can give them in any form that you wish. If there are recommended conditions that you think would be appropriate to the development, those are certainly appropriate to share with council. And I'll leave it there. I don't know if you wish to ask any questions of myself or anyone else, but back to you, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Gopin. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for the planner? Mr. Simmons.
Always. Sorry, Xander.
No?
Quick question then. One of the things we talked about earlier, you talked about in your presentation, was the Condominium Act. How does this fall with it? Whereas the Condominium Act states that, it needs to be in a building. How does this fit within that Condominium Act for the province of New Brunswick?
So the Condominium Act doesn't require it to be in a building. Yes, it is part of a building, but it doesn't mean that all the units are attached. So the one example of a condominium corporation in Charlotte County currently is in St. Stephen, and it's I think it's called the River Garden Homes, and they're mostly duplexes. So they're in some ways attached, but in some ways detached as well. They're not like an apartment building. They're one-story dwellings. So you can have condominiums that are in various shapes or forms. It just means you don't have fee simple lots.
Okay, my second question is then, with the increase in traffic at that intersection and from that property line, we've looked at this in the past, was there any need for, do you feel as the development officer, for a traffic survey to be done in this area?
So a traffic study was recently done for that area, because this would be actually a relatively small development in comparison to the Stonewall Place development that could be coming, which council has approved in terms of planning. We don't know when the actual development was coming, but there was a traffic study done as part of that project, and that could be up to 120 units, I believe. So these 12 units, while yes, they would add some traffic compared to that. And in the traffic study, they considered all these factors, and the increased time to people using Mowat Drive was fairly minimal in that study. And that's something I think that's is that publicly available, Mr. Knopper, that study?
Yes, it is upon request.
Okay, yeah, so it is something that could be reviewed as part of this, but council has been presented with that study, and I think this is 10% of what one of the projects that was considered, and that's potentially, especially the full build out of that 120 units, is many years away. So I don't think another one would be required. Maybe consideration of that initial one is worthwhile reviewing.
Okay. I also had a chat with Paul about my next question earlier and just brought it up to him, and he felt that I could bring it forward. Originally, so that the entrance and exit to this new development project is fairly close to the entrance or exit or whatever we would call it, Tim Hortons. Originally, when we allowed the Tim Hortons project to follow through, I happened to be on council when that happened, so I'm familiar with it, is that the driveway that enters on Reed Avenue was originally only ever supposed to be an exit. And at one time there was arrows there and do not enter. And I think it's something that should be looked at to continue. So traffic doesn't back up on that street for everybody trying to turn in to get into the drive-through lane when originally we agreed that it would come from Mowat Drive, the other entrance, and they would enter the traffic flow pattern there and leave out that pattern to keep that traffic flow going. And then people out of the parking lot could exit onto Reed Avenue. And I think it's something that
Mr. Simmons, you're entering onto Mowat.
Mowat, sorry, backwards,
Yeah.
apologize, yes. And anyways, there was do not enters and an arrow out there, and I think it's something that should be looked at again. That was what
People ignore.
I know,
I could tell
but at
us.
least if we put the signs up. And that they may actually, some people might actually pay attention, but if we back up flow there, I don't know, it's just, I'm throwing it at their food for thought. It was originally what we agreed to back when we allowed the Tim Hortons to go there. And it was an agreement that we had with them when we allowed it to go forward. And I think to help with traffic flow, that I think it's something that should be looked at, but I mean, that's up to you guys. I just wanted to throw back out there. I talked with Paul about it earlier and he said I could bring it up, so I'm bringing it up. The rest will be for those guys.
All right. Does anyone else have? Yes, hi, thanks.
So Sandra, you said that the road, the access road, the developer's intention is to continue to allow the homes that are behind this new development to continue to have access. Is that, did I hear you say that right? Intention? Or is that something
They
that?
would be legally required to under
would
right-of-way
be.
agreements. Yeah.
Okay.
And if
So-
access was blocked, then that would be a legal civil matter.
Okay, so there'd be no potential for access to the homes and further down the road, that their access could be impeded.
There would be legal recourse if that was the case.
Okay, and can you put up the rendering again? Please? The one that shows the parking?
That one?
Or do you want the site plan?
Yes, I plan, thank you.
Xander, can you move it to the site plan?
Yeah, which one?
Keep going, keep going, keep going. One of your first slides with the site plan of the overlay, one above. Either that one or the one below.
Yeah, that one's good,
Okay.
that one. So the parking, the parking is in sort of the back of the development, correct?
Yes.
And it would have enough spots for how many? Because there's 12 dwellings, I couldn't count, I can't really see. So,
There's at least 12 spots. There's one accessible spot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 spots plus the one accessible spot. So that would meet the requirements under the current zoning bylaw for
And Mr. Gopin,
dwelling
down to the south, there's an additional 4 spaces.
Oh, you're right. There's an additional 4 down there. Yeah.
okay, I see now.
Probably.
Okay. So, I get and I really like the idea that this proposal promotes sort of a pedestrian community. And and it wouldn't be for everyone. Not everyone would want to have to park and walk with their groceries or their whatever. But the challenge for me are the folks who live behind. And that's what, I know that there's a barrier, or I see that there's a treed barrier. I don't know how much of a barrier that would actually be from the parking lot, but that's what the residents behind them, that's what they would see of this community, is the parking lot. And I wonder, is there anything that we could do? Could we require or make it a condition that barrier between the parking lot and the remaining properties be greater than what is required?
Yeah, PAC can recommend to council, because of the integrated development zone is through conditions, that barrier could be increased. Typically under the zoning bylaw in these cases, a 2-meter buffer with 1.5 foot, or sorry, 1.5 meter high screening would be required. So that could be through a fence or through the 2 meters of planted material. So in this case, the site plan is indicating planted material, and I think it's important to, if council does go ahead with this, to require that screening probably be fairly significant. And that is certainly something that PAC can recommend to council.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for the planner, anyone? Yes, you can.
Would it be too much to ask if we made a recommendation for it not to be planted buffer barrier? In terms of trees that the deer like to eat, but in terms of maybe a fence that fits, that would be suitable for the area, you know, to help with noise and the view of the parking lot. And
That could certainly be a recommendation. It could be a fence and planted vegetation, with the fence around the outside and the vegetation on the inside. And if, in case the vegetation dies or gets you know, gnawed on by the deer, you've got the fence as a backup.
Has there been a mail out done yet? I've just received the one email. From the one resident.
So the process currently is that there is a public hearing of objections set for September 3rd. Letters went out to adjacent neighbors within 100 meters notifying them of the proposed development and the public hearing of objections yesterday. So those within 100 meters will have received a mail out noting, and that is actually a new council process they've asked for. So within 14 days of any public hearing of objections regarding rezoning, letters must go out now.
So this is more our views than collecting the views of neighbors or anything else. That's really not why we're here tonight, so. Perfect. Anybody else? Yes.
Andrew, sorry, can you put up the site plan again? I just want to go back to Kevin's point about the Tim Hortons. Because it's terrible. I drive by there many times every day, but I still, so that exit that we're talking about to the Tim Hortons, that's directly across from that road. Is that correct?
Not quite correct, really close.
It's
Kind of this way. Do the original site drawings have it, Xander, of the house being there? The one with the red line around it when you had the 3 PIDs?
oh, it's okay.
Oh, yeah, we have that.
but I don't,
Yeah, we have it. You can see it right
yeah,
there.
but
It's literally across the road.
am I seeing
It's right here.
So it's just kind of,
It's 10 feet up the road.
it's kind of.
it? Oh, right there, okay.
It's just catching the very end of it right here.
Right. So that would, I think Kevin raises a really important point in terms of that exit. And we've got, so we've got the current existing houses that contend with some of that congestion, certainly early in the morning time. But now we're gonna have 12 more units coming and going from there. And I do think that that potentially is going to create some significant challenges if we do not find a way to kind of regulate that as being just an exit. And I have to say, I'm at fault for going in there.
Well, you know it now.
I know better now.
With Xander, if you go back to that site plan, sorry. Was there any discussion of having it a one-way road that would go all the way around? So they would enter where it is and it would go all the way around and exit farther up towards the motel. And that way, the impact against that hotel would be a little bit lessened as well.
There was a previous site plan that did have a two-way road, like a looping road.
But was
It
it-
was a
was it-
public road. It was a subdivision. It was a more complex development in certain senses.
But was it two-way traffic or was it one-way traffic? Because if it was one way, you could make that road more narrow, because you're also losing that gap that's to the bottom of the.
It would have been a two-way public road.
You couldn't do a one-way private road?
You can, and well, this wouldn't be a one-way private road, but the previous, even though it was looping, it was a two-way road. It had the required width for that. But again, like council can require certain traffic patterns, although I would advise that those be based on recommendations from the Municipal Public Works Department.
Mhm. But as well, like all of a sudden, if you start moving the traffic more away from the existing residents that are attached to this road, they're going to be impacted less as well. It's just an idea. I don't know where we're at the design on this, or whether we can comment on design or not. I mean, we didn't have these illustrations in our package. We got these just earlier today. So this is really just as the second time I really looked at them.
Okay. I mean, yeah, so council can require any design that they feel is in the best interest of the community. If they want to go ahead with the project and grant the rezoning. So those are certainly valid comments.
Because I mean, like it's great that, the garages have been removed in this iteration, and that there's the creation of this central green space. That's great, because it's for community, and that the parking is to the rear, it's not to the road, which is also good. And they're showing screening. My issue right now is that when I look at the renderings, I see the same typology of house all the way down through there. And I don't feel that's what we want to be creating. We want to have at least, I would think, at least 3 mix of different houses. Plus, I could be wrong, but I think these are 1,600 square meters, these houses. They're 800 square feet on each floor. So that's still kind of a significantly large house. They're all three bedroom, 2-bath homes. And I thought we were trying to get like a little bit more of a typology of something a bit smaller here. This seems quite large again. And if we're looking also at people aging in place, 2-story as opposed to 1-story. I mean, you look at the buildings that are up on Victoria Terrace, those are 1,300 square feet. And those are still 2-bedroom, 2-bath.
So PAC, a little context here. So they did actually present a 1-story level development concept to council, the last reiteration of this. And council had several comments that came back as it looked too much like a mini home park. And there were a lot of concerns around that. So that's why this new rendering design has come forward and council has moved it to your views because they felt it more in line with the community. So just to give you an idea of what they've looked at before with smaller homes and different design patterns to what there's being presented now.
Yeah, the last one was 8 with the road.
And this is 12.
Yeah, but what happened was when the last one with 8 in the road, it did a loop road and it came back up through and the houses, some of the houses were in the parking lot. I seen the first rendering.
And there's
But
garages.
it also didn't allow for one of my insights when I looked at it and the road that was coming in. Because of the reduction in size, because adding the road, it really didn't even allow any sidewalks per se. So people were actually gonna walk in the roadway. I seen the first renderings and I like this one way better than the first initial rendering. It does add 4 more homes, but yeah, they did have a driveway that went out on the other side. But like you said, council,
And I think the other one, it was, you're driving up to your property. You were not
it's a
within a parking
road
area.
thing.
I mean, I think there's a lot of great cons with this. It's just, my issue is it's the same building repeated 12 times. And that starts to look really not the best practice. And as far as urban design, we shouldn't be doing that whatsoever. We should always be having a mix of homes and the typologies.
Maybe we can ask the developers why they went this way, sitting right there.
Yep. So. Oh,
Can I just add a question?
Absolutely.
So did I hear you say, or somebody say, so it's 1,600 square feet per dwelling here, and the ones up behind or up by Kingsbury are 13?
and I believe those are all 1-story. These are 2-story.
Right.
Just to note with the 1-story, they are 1-stories with basements. And then if you look at the design at the Victoria Terrace, it really almost perceives as almost a 2-story design based on how it sits on the actual slopes. So depending on how you look at it and what you think, it could be perceived as a 2-story development if you consider the basement the first story.
Right. And there's a lot of things I really like about this pocket community. I do get Dwight's point in terms of the sort of the look of it in terms of all of the dwellings being the same. I mean, you know, you look at some of the places like some of the garden homes are in St. John, in Milledgeville, you know, those are all pretty much, I mean, they vary a little bit, but what makes them distinct is you know, the color of the doors, or like there's offset, right? So I know you can do some of that aesthetically, cosmetically, or whatever. I do just feel like 12 seems dense when I look at that site drawing.
Absolutely. You're more than welcome to ask questions of the developer at this time. Okay.
Right.
Hey, you go.
Yeah, you just get to ask a question. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your thinking around the 12? Like, how did you come up with the size of the dwellings and the number of dwellings on the property?
So the number of dwellings came down to the space that we had to work with, and then to keep the cost per square foot as low as we can. We need to add a couple of extra units to try and keep it in that kind of affordable price range.
And when you say affordable, what's the ballpark?
Ballpark is in the 4s. We're still pricing out the project now.
Of course. Okay.
Yeah, we're hoping around 4, kind of thing. So as far as the scheme goes, the last renderings, she was really busy and never got them back to us. But the plan was always to actually have pastel colors, like seaside colors, that they're all going to be different. So
Which is great, but I also think I feel there needs to be small little architectural details on the buildings as well to set them apart from each other. Maybe it's just a window placement, maybe it's the size of the porch, maybe it's, like I said, I love the fact that this communal space is being created. I think that's great.
yeah,
And the other thing with that, you're showing porches on the front, which is great. Make sure those porches are robust and big enough to get furniture on them. So you can have people sitting outside to watch the kids running around or to chat with their neighbor. Because that's what gets people outside, it builds community, et cetera, et cetera. But I know with a rendering like this, it's quick and easy just to take the one model and slap it right down, boom, 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 and you put it on the other side. I wouldn't want to see that happen with the development. And it would even be, I don't know whether you guys, and I'm sure you guys have done your pro forma and you've got your numbers all set out, but even saying, you know, we're going to do 1,600, we're going to do a model that's only 900, that's 1 story, we're going to do a model that's 1,200, that's the upstairs is only 1 bedroom and a bath and it's cut back and there's an outdoor terrace upstairs. It's just 12 of the same units marching down that courtyard is going to really start feeling like it's not a great precedent for us to set. And I think I know when subdivisions were created, you would have the same product used again and again and again, all the way down, which creates a monotone. And we can't honestly, we shouldn't be doing that anymore. That was set in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We've moved on from that, and we should really be looking at some different, just some small tweaks of architectural detail on each of those buildings so they do look different. I mean, you can fool the eye a lot by just masking certain things, and any good design will do that. So I would really challenge you guys and like I said, I'm sure you guys have done your whole, this is how we've done it, this is all set up, but if we want to be really giving a product to the community that we really feel they need to have, there should be a more mix in there. I feel there should be seniors, they don't want to have stairs, they want to have 1-story living. If this is going to be downsizing, maybe 2 bedrooms, it's just a different mix. And I know that's more cost. I know you don't have the same formwork. Boom, you do the formwork for one, you keep repeating it, and you have to do some more work. But I think it does benefit the community at the end of it.
in this situation, we do have 1 level living. People
You do.
that are older do have family members that might want to stay upstairs, that kind of thing. So that was kind of our basis, that a lot of people live in St. Andrews, but they have family come visit. So the upstairs for a lot of people will just be for visiting family. But
Yeah, the main level is set up as
Right.
single story living, but as we can do architectural changes on the structures, but the issues when you're doing kind of like densified housing is privacy. So when you're inside your house, so you won't really see it on those renderings, but all the layouts are designed and all the window placements are placed so they're not overlooking everyone on your
Right.
neighbors. So you have privacy when you're outside of the house and when you're inside of the house.
Mhm.
So if we start playing around with different like building shapes and sizes, then we might lose some of that privacy. But we can change architectural details on the building to make each house
oh yes, I can build
different.
12 different pergolas or whatever.
Yeah.
That's fun. So I'm game.
Yeah.
So in the rendering, when I seen one of the things go by and you had just talked about privacy, it literally was the stairs come out on the front, but it didn't look like there was any windows on that whole back side of the next house.
No,
There
everything
was no windows on the back side of the next house?
everything should be
So it was
placed
a
in
private yard.
directly
essentially.
overlooking each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you guys feel about the feedback and it's been asked by the adjacent property owners about a fence being installed behind the hedge or trees or whatever along the parking lot?
Yeah, we understand that, as neighbors on that property, us coming in doing a development's gonna you know, it's going to be unsettling. So we're happy to work with them and do what it needs.
Okay.
to-
And I have one more question. It was for Xander. It was also for the guys. I brought it up to Paul earlier today. How is garbage being dealt with? I noticed that there was no dumpsters on site. I know it's gonna be part of the condominium agreement. Are they gonna bring all the garbage out to the street and dropped off? Or are you guys due to put a dumpster back in on that green area and fence it in? How is garbage being dealt with?
It will most likely be a fenced-in dumpster with a weekly pickup.
Okay, so will that be on the back side of the parking lot? In that back, like, the parking lot, I guess, went this way, so you're talking in that back green area?
Yeah, to the back left, it would be.
Xander, can you bring it up so they can
Can
you
you
bring
tell
us
me
up
about
the
this?
parking lot area again? Oh, see you
Yeah,
guys. got
there's
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't have that.
It's in my email.
So we're talking back in this area?
It'll be to the
Yeah.
far left in that clearing, yeah.
Yeah, so right back, okay. Okay, and that would be fenced in as
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that can be something that's a condition with the,
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to bring it up because I didn't know if they were throwing it all out in the curb the night before and everybody was bringing the garbage out. So it'd be in that back right-hand corner, I guess, or left or whatever you. Right in there,
right in
yeah.
there, yeah.
So that's where you're talking about in there, guys?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because we had talked about that earlier. Well, I had talked about that earlier with Paul. And my last question is, and I noticed that you have a bunch of trees along there. I think I've talked to Andy or Dwayne about this before. What about visual sightline and setback of trees from the edge of the road? So when they come out, you can have a clear path both ways. As what was the discussion on that as well, Xander, that it's kept very clear on the setback, just so that there's no blind spots there, right? And I
yeah,
don't
so there
know
is a site
now.
triangle.
Yeah,
There's a site triangle requirement in the zoning bylaw, and it's an absolutely valid point to bring up. It's a good thing, good reminder. And we'll take a look. I think with the site plan, there's probably and it can be a condition as well that when we review that particular part of the zoning bylaw, there's no vegetation within that site triangle.
Oh, I see in that one, they almost got like a 6-foot space between the edge of the road and where the green space starts. Is that correct?
That's a shed, town shed.
No, where his mouse is, right there along that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, right there.
Yeah, we'll review the site triangle requirements, but I think if it's all off of the right of way, it probably is fine. And there's already kind of
Oh, I
vegetation
see,
there
set
where
the
the
back for the town's
existing
right of way.
driveway is. Yeah, the
Okay.
town's right of way there, but you have an existing driveway here with the vegetation
Yeah,
in existence already, as you can see.
yeah. So would that be trimmed back and taken care of, ripped out or whatever?
I think my advice to council would be, look at the site triangle requirements in the zoning bylaw and have that be a condition of the site plan approval if they do wish to go ahead with this rezoning.
Okay.
And that can be something the PAC advises to council.
And my last question is, when we move to a rezone to an IDF, an IDZ zone, or IDZ zone, the subdivision plans that we have in place now still are in place for that zone, am I correct?
They would be in place where a subdivision is happening. In this case, I mean, there's some land assembly happening, but it's not a subdivision with fee simple lots. So
Yeah.
they don't apply in this case because of the condominium.
Okay,
I will note that if you were to look at the subdivision bylaw, if this was to be a public road, the width, the parking, everything would be sufficient. There's fire access. It should be reviewed by Public Works. It has been reviewed by Public Works, and their feedback should be given to council as well on any concerns they have, as well as the fire department. But from what we know so far, there are no concerns.
yeah, just to re-verify, the big white thing that's going down the driveway, that's a fire truck, right? So it has a good turn radius going into the parking lot and so on. Would there be any requirement for a hydrant? So Xander, my only last question, and it just come up when I looked at Jeff and I said fire truck. What is the requirement? Would there be any requirement for a fire hydrant in that location, or is there already one there?
We'd have to review that with the fire department, but again,
Yes.
based on the distance from existing public road frontage, I think within 90 meters of that, we have reviewed that with the building inspector, and there should be sufficient firefighting access if necessary from Mowat Drive.
Okay, that was my only other concern. All right, thank you.
Dwight?
Just, I'm just gonna make one comment, and maybe it's wrong, but if the garbage pickup is at that node up at the top, a truck is gonna have to go in, pick it up, and then he's backing up all the way and then turning and then down. Is that how it would be operating?
Possibly, or
So well, the only thing I'm thinking is that if it does go up and comes back, it's gonna have to be going into the, whoever is at the very end, that property is gonna be going into their driveway access. So it's, and I mean, I love the fact that you guys are prepared, you're prepared to give access to this through the site, to these existing properties. It's just, you know, you want to mitigate as many conflicts as possible.
but we can also move it up to the front, close to the road as well. There's no set location for it yet.
If that's a fire truck, though, there's definitely enough room for a truck to still stay on our land and back in there, though.
To go in and then, oh, okay, so yeah,
It would back in, not the windows first.
it would,
So it would drive down the lane, it would go into the front.
Yeah, it would come in here, back up,
back in,
and then
road,
go back out again.
okay, as long as there's enough room,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
Okay.
looks like there's a good 30 feet there.
If a fire truck can do it, a garbage truck can do it.
Okay,
Yeah, I think there's.
So I really think we should push for a one-way street, come in here and move up here. I'm thinking about the Amazon, people dropping off packages, these folks over here coming and going, leaving, you know, how are they gonna move in? If this is just gonna be a walkway, it's gonna be huge pain to lug everything from the parking lot over to here, couches and what's that gonna look like? Or how are these people? I think we should really take consideration into a one-way street that just doesn't loop. Another thing I think we need to think about too is a school bus pickup drop-off zone, for kids. Yeah, that's my two thoughts. I have another thought too, but I'll wait. I think we need to also put in some terms and conditions too, or a recommendation, I guess, about any of the residents having operating businesses out of their homes. If that's allowed in that zoning area or not.
That would be probably come.
Okay.
Yeah, later.
Zoning bylaw.
It's what?
There are provisions under the zoning bylaw for home-based businesses. There's a whole section that talks about
Yeah.
square footage, what's allowed, how do you operate out of it.
So I have some concerns about the traffic, about the road, but. Oh my God, to put that road in between that nice green space.
Yeah,
So-
so it doesn't have to go there, you know, I was.
But-
Put things a little more this way and bring it around or something. I don't think-
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
just to point out, consider the similar to Anchor's Landing or Compass Housing, where they have a single parking lot. People have to shift furniture, supplies, everything from a parking lot into a building.
Yeah.
Very similar concept of what you're seeing here, just with an exterior pedestrian. So just giving PAC another view of
Mhm.
what's already
No,
available in
it's
the
good to
community.
keep that in perspective. Thank you very much. Thanks.
I have a question on, just, I grew up in that neighborhood and I know it's low once you get back into that area, and consideration with drainage. You know, we're gonna have the road there, now you're gonna have a parking lot, and I'm sure it's been thought of and thought out in your development scheme and stuff, but just as consideration that it's not gonna flood this property in behind now, because that's a big, you got a big area there as a parking lot that's gonna run off somewhere. And it's, like I said, it's low in that area as it is, and it's gonna gather somewhere. So just I wanted to bring that up just as also a consideration for stormwater drainage, yeah, so.
Mr. Gopin, as per the zoning bylaw, doesn't it dictate that new developments can't adversely affect adjacent properties with stormwater?
It's another municipal plan, but what I would advise if council wishes to move ahead with this project. A condition is that before any development happens, a stormwater management plan prepared by an engineer. Indicates that all stormwater generated on the property will be directed to municipal stormwater facilities or managed on the property without impacting any of the properties around it.
We actually have stormwater management and for the civil work drawings getting drawn up now to accommodate all of that.
All right, anyone else? So what I hear, I think we're done. Are we done with the questions, et cetera? Yes,
Any other questions for the?
I don't think so. No, thank you.
Thanks.
So what I heard during that is that the PAC recommends that the barrier between the rear parking lot, the rear parking and the lots should be increased. Perhaps a fence as a backup to the planted material. Is that
Could
what I
we,
heard?
could we put a dimension on that?
Yes, please, yes.
I would say at least 2 meters. Because that would allow to get a fence and planting in there as well.
I think it's only one. I think it might only be one.
Okay, okay.
Was it? Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The fence is only 1.5 meters, so I think we should
It should be 1.8.
put 6 foot.
Mhm.
6 foot fence. Not chain link. No.
Oh, and it needs, yeah, it needs to be, well, here we go with fencing again, aren't we? It should be of a nature that it's not completely solid, but it mitigates any light transplant, like light transparency. Yeah, but I mean, like you could have like even just gaps, if there's gaps and like you don't want to have them, you don't want them stacked on top of each other.
You're looking for screening.
Yeah,
No
Proper screening-
walls.
Screening. of
no
the-
walls.
No
Yeah,
walls.
yeah.
But it's just to mitigate the headlights.
Headlights, yeah,
And
yeah.
light pollution and stuff, people
And
coming and
sound.
going in there.
So with the planting and the fence, it will create a buffer.
Mhm. Agreed. I heard also, that it would, PAC would recommend, building designs, without any distinction as far as architectural details, maybe be discouraged. Is that what you're looking for? Just to add some architectural detail, to
Right.
add differences. I would probably wordsmith that way better in the letter. I'll try again.
Yeah, I mean, in my ideal world, which is not really gonna happen, I would love to see some different typology of built form on here.
Yeah,
I don't know whether we're too far down that road. I know you guys mentioned 1-story living, which is what you do have set up, 800 square feet, bedroom on the ground floor. Who knows whether you need to have those 2 other bedrooms and bathroom upstairs for every one of them. Maybe there's 4 of them that are only 1 story, something of that nature. I don't know. I don't know how far down you guys are set in stone with stuff. I just want to see a bit more of a mix in here. It's supposed to be a community with different types of living in it, such as people downsizing, some older people, maybe younger people getting into the housing market. So I think maybe some of the housing can reflect that different user groups.
Madam Chair, I've sort of wordsmithed something here, if you're okay. That building designs to have some different design typologies per house to differentiate them in architectural design and builds.
Those are way more words than I had.
You're welcome.
But
Put it this way, I just don't want to see different paint colors on every house, because that's not going to change the
Right.
look of the house.
right, but we don't want also to uh take away from the privacy aspects that they've already put
That's
into
right.
place, because I think that that's really, those are important details. The
Yeah.
fact that
Yeah.
not every house or every house is looking into each other's windows. I think that's a critical component that they have already thought of.
Can add to that, so, but do not take away from the privacy aspects of identified development.
Thank you.
I'll just look over to you when it comes time for me to summarize this one more time. We also discussed recommending a fenced-in section for a dumpster with weekly pickups. Recommending that as a condition. Reviewing site triangle requirements, should council move forward with this? Just to make sure that sight lines aren't compromised at all. And that a stormwater management plan prepared by an engineer be submitted prior to any development. Should it go ahead? Have I missed anything? Or added something that I didn't need to?
I'm still just wondering about the traffic issue.
Right, okay, yeah, that's a
So
big
did we
one.
talk about the Tim Hortons entrance exit slash?
Well, that's a whole different property, so I think we need
But
to.
traffic
It
period.
is, but it's going to affect this development, I think, in ways.
I don't know how we can impose a condition on a development that includes buy-in from another property owner. How do we enforce that?
Well, I think it's enforcing what was already approved in the past. It's just for council to go back and look at when Tim Hortons was approved, what that
Mhm.
exiting was, and
Might-
then it
yeah.
needs to be enforced again.
Might I recommend that it's a condition that council review the previous traffic study that was done for the Mowat and Bar Road, as well as for council to review the previous agreements with Tim Hortons for the exit only, as it relates to traffic safety of the development.
Okay. Have I covered it?
That's it.
Sidewalks and.
Madam Chair, the only other thing that was noted was bus safety and bus stop. If you want to recommend something along those lines, that was brought up.
I would assume that the bus stop is going to be at the top of up the top of the driveway, right? We're not going to have a bus going in and picking up. No.
So just so you know how the bus works coming in the morning, it does stop multiple times just past Thomas Avenue. There, it will literally stop at almost the corner of Thomas Avenue, drive less than 50 to 60 meters, stop and pick up another set of children. So
Yeah, there
they
are
do make a
two
lot
sets
of,
kids.
yeah, at
Yeah.
least in that zone. So it would be within that realm that and plus the kids are going to have to cross the road at that point. So
Yeah,
that might be something you might want to consider council looking at as a,
looking at a
So-
crosswalk for safety.
well, and to note that there will be a crosswalk put at Thomas Avenue and the Compass housing. So it might have to be a discussion of where students are picked up maybe on that side of the road and that they will have to cross over there for bus safety because they're already being picked up on that side. And that's where the door is. So just trying to tell you how I see it when I drive in the mornings behind the bus. So
There's gonna be some kids in Compass housing too, I would suspect.
correct.
Oh, yeah.
So I think every development has the same issue, but it really, yeah. So review bus safety for this and other developments. Is that kind of?
I think, yeah, for not just this development.
Right, exactly, and Stonewall and everything. Yeah, that road is becoming quite a going concern for sure. Okay, so barrier screening. Some architectural details while maintaining privacy. Fenced in section for dumpster, review site triangle requirements, stormwater management. Council should review previous traffic study for the bar Mowat area and review requirements with respect to Tim Hortons exit. Is that where we left it? Okay, good. And then reviewing bus safety for this and other developments in the area. Okay, those are a lot of views. Did I cover them all? Did I miss any?
Madam
No.
Chair, those were all the notes.
Pardon me?
Those were everything that was noted in
Wonderful,
your
thanks for.
discussions.
Thanks for keeping track. All right, so I've read off the items that I'm going to include in the letter to council. I've read them all to you. I would be looking for a motion to move that forward.
I'll make a motion to move all those points forward to council.
Wonderful, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Simmons, thanks so much. All right, if there's no other comments or anything to add, all those in favor of my preparing the letter as described, please signify by saying aye.
Okay.
And none opposed? I shall do that very thing tomorrow morning. Thank you very much. Moving on. Our other agenda item tonight is PAC 240812. This is for 158 Augustus Street, the town of St. Andrews. Oh, is that me?
No, that's me.
Okay, the town of St. Andrews has received a terms and conditions application for a fence at 158 Augustus Street, PID 101322569. Good night, thank you. For Audrey and Wayne McCullough, excuse me. Hello, Judy, how are you? Welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
We'll turn it over to you, Ms. Hartford, to take us through your planning report.
Great, thank you. One moment, please.
Thanks so.
Okay, as you said, this is the Audrey McCullough Terms and Conditions application. And the applicant is requesting terms and conditions to erect a 6.5-foot fence within the front and flankage yard. So the subject lot is in the SR zone in the town plat and contains a single unit dwelling, which will allow main use within the SR zone. The property fronts on Carlton Street and Augustus Street, and the property is fronting on Carlton, as that's a shorter dimension, and the flankage yard would be on Augustus Street. So this fence, it is on the sideline, and although it is on the sideline, it is within the front and flankage yard, as the definition does say that it extends from the nearest wall of the dwelling to the front and flankage lot lines. So although it's not going on the frontage of Carlton or Augustus, it's still within that front and flankage yard. Section 3.21 of the zoning bylaw has standards for the development in relation to setbacks, height, and construction, as well as requirements for the TC. So terms and conditions within the front and flankage yard of a residential zone. So notification of this PAC meeting was sent to neighbors within 100 meters of the property. This is a site plan here. Do you see the Carlton Street here with Augustus Street? The site plan does show the 3.3 feet setback from the adjacent property line, but it will also have to be 3.3 feet back from Carlton Street, as well as 3.3 feet back from the rear line of the property. And you'll see here, this is the aerial view of the property, and the fence is this section here in brown, and that will be extended on from the front of the property to the back, maintaining that 3.3 foot setback. So as I said, the owner wishes to erect a 6.5 foot fence, and it'll be a wood fence within the front and flankage yard of the property within the town plat. And because this wasn't within the front yard, say abutting Carlton or Augustus, there would be no issues with looking into the property. So whereas if you were putting a fence on the front line, we may look at that being not a wood plate solid fence, more of like a chain link fence. But in this case, where it's on the sideline, that wasn't taken into consideration. So fences at 6.5 feet in height are allowed use under the zoning bylaw. And as it is in a residential zone, the PAC can apply terms and conditions as it deems necessary. So terms and conditions so imposed shall be limited to those considered necessary by the PAC. And applications for permitted uses subject to terms and conditions may only be prohibited by the PAC where the terms and conditions imposed cannot reasonably be expected. And it is in staff opinion that the proposed fence is reasonable and desirable for the development of land subject to the recommended terms and conditions. And so the recommendation is staff recommends that the Planning Advisory Committee, PAC, permit a 6.5-foot fence located within the front flankage yard of the property in the SR zone of the town of St. Andrews zoning bylaws Z2201, subject to the following terms and conditions. So no fence in any residential or commercial zone shall be electrified or incorporate barbed wire or other sharp, dangerous material in its construction, and the fence shall not be maintained so that it does not, the fence shall be maintained so that it does not become unsightly, dilapidated, or unsafe. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Harper. Over to the committee. Does anyone have any questions for the planner on this application?
I'm not too sure if the applicant's online, they might be able to answer this better. Is the fence for deer, or what's the primary objective behind putting a fence up?
There was a hedge there before, so I don't know if it's just privacy concerns. Where the property is not going to be completely fenced in. I don't necessarily think that would be for the deer, but I do think it may be because the existing hedge was there, provided a little bit of privacy. Now that hedge is kind of, it's, you know, because of the deer and whatnot, it's not the full hedge that it used to be. And so now that fence being placed would be more for privacy, as it's not, you know, it's not fencing the whole property in.
Yeah, okay.
Judy, I have a couple of questions, because honestly, what we have to comment on, it doesn't really show very well where this fence is going to be. I'm being really stupid of trying to read this.
It's gonna
But
be.
just
bigger.
let Judy do it. Is it indeed where the picket fence is? That's where it's going? That's where the existing fence is? And that's where it's going?
Yes, you can see in the pictures, there's a little bit of a picket fence there, and there's some hedge there too. So I think at one time there was probably was both, you know, the hedge there and that little picket fence. So that because that hedge is no longer there to provide that buffer, the new fence will take place of that existing picket fence and along that hedge as well.
So it'll be along the driveway, along the flankage, and then along the front.
Along the front, not the flankage. So Carlton Street's your front, Augustus would be the flankage. So it's technically on a sideline, but because the front yard is defined as being from the property line, the front property line to the wall of the building, that's still within. So you take the whole frontage of the front of the property. And so again, this is really technically on the sideline, but because front yard is defined as being from the wall of the building to the front line, then therefore it's still within the front yard and does require them terms and conditions because it's over 3.3 feet. Now, had it been under 3.3 feet, it wouldn't require in terms and conditions, but because it is over the 3.3 feet, it does require them terms and conditions. So it's not in a sense where you would see like it's you know, on the front and flankage, like on Augustus and Carlton, it's really on the sideline, but again, still within the front yard.
Right, because it goes beyond the front of the house towards the road.
Exactly, yes.
Mhm.
And so I know in the revisions coming to the zoning bylaw, these terms and conditions will be something that I think council is looking at, you know, ensuring that we can do them as development officers in-house versus coming to PAC every time, because they do seem to, you know, come up quite often, especially when you're looking at the front yard being from the main wall to that main or to the front line or flankage line.
Mhm. And did the applicant supply a rendering of or like an elevation of the fence?
They didn't, it's a wood fence, 6.5 feet, but no renderings were, asked for, and because it wasn't, like I said, on the Carleton or Augustus side, where you would not see that visual, where it would, block that visual, I didn't ask for that rendering.
Okay.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I used to own 345 Carroll Street, the property next door. There was a really nice hedge there at one time. When I owned the house next door that it's going towards, you couldn't see your house. I expect it's all gone. But there was a delineation between the driveway on Carroll Street 345 and her corner lot. It's pretty well gone. She just wants that privacy back. You used to not be able to see in her backyard. It's literally in her backyard, right?
Mhm.
And at one time, I owned it quite a few years ago, but there was a really nice hedge there and a nice cedar, but
Yeah.
I expect there's nothing there now.
Yeah. Anyone else for the planner? And I understand the applicant is not online. Anyone from the polling area want to comment?
No one from the polling area is online or in the audience, and we received no letters.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
All right, well, then I guess it's completely up to us. I think we're up to the task. We can get a motion on the table and discuss it some more if you'd like. I'll move. Oh,
Okay.
okay. I would move that the Planning Advisory Committee of the Town of St. Andrews approves the terms and conditions application for a 6.5 foot fence located within the front and flankage yards in the serviced residential zone for 158 Augustus Street, PID 013222569 for Audrey and Wayne McCullough, with the following terms and conditions. No fence in any residential or commercial zone shall be electrified or incorporate barbed wire or other sharp, dangerous materials in its construction. And 2, that the fence shall be maintained so that it does not become unsightly, dilapidated, or unsafe. Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for that motion? Mr. Simmons, thank you very much. Any further discussion?
I got one thing. We don't have to put anything in about being 3.3 feet from the front yard and the backyard property lines.
You can put that as a condition. I will also have them issue or submit a new site plan showing that separation, but it was clearly indicated to the owner that had to be done. So it definitely will have to have a new site plan, but definitely could be added as a condition just to ensure that they're that 3.3 feet off of that rear and the front property line.
But did you not say earlier it has to be done that way anyways? So it would.
It does.
So it's in the bylaw. Okay, then we don't have
Yes.
to. Okay.
Thank you. Anything more?
Could we add a condition that the applicant needs to submit a fence elevation for review and comment?
For our review and comment?
Or for town review and comment?
Oh, I see. Part of the building permit being issued?
Well,
I'm just trying to formulate the condition.
yeah, I mean, just. I would say maybe it's for town staff to review it.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it's. They're saying a 6.5 high wood fence. What's it gonna look like? Like, I know that we can't comment on design, but I also feel that we should sort of control a little bit as well if we can. So we have an idea of what they're gonna come in with and that we can sort of vet it properly. I mean, I know this is all this, I mean, it's been 2 years now that I've been asking for the town. Sorry, Judy. So staff review that fence bylaw. And I know we keep coming up with it, and my concern, I like the fact that, yes, I can see what they're doing. I understand what they're doing. What they had there was smaller, and probably more contained because they didn't have the issues with the deer now. And if it's just to create privacy, I understand that completely.
Mhm.
Once again, I don't want to see a wall. I don't want to see, I would like to see it would just be nice to have an elevation so you have an idea of, you can have a comfort level to say, hey, okay, this is a nice fence.
So, that the owners submit a fence design that meets the, like, what, I guess I just need to make sure that it's specific and enforceable.
I mean, can they?
Mhm.
I mean, do we not have the teeth to review, not us, but the town? Like when something comes in, do they have the opportunity to review if they have an elevation?
I think that the bylaw describes building materials and whatnot, but
Yeah, so as staff, the process is that the planning commission would look at and review any of the plans, documentation, fencing, design styles that come in. What is asked of town staff is if there's, things like sight lines, water lines, sewer lines, infrastructure that we have concerns about. That's when we get involved, but as it comes to a whole, Miss Hartford and the Service New Brunswick, our Southwest New Brunswick team, they review all of that to determine and ensure. I mean, we're looking at a property that's pretty flat, as you can see from the pictures that were provided. So you're looking at a 6.5-foot fence that's going to be on a flat surface. So I'm not sure what other sight line, and Ms. Hartford, you can mention it, but do you need anything else as visuals as it pertains to issuing of permits?
No, I do not. So in the zoning bylaw, if you're going up to an 8.2 fence on a side or a rear line, there is conditions on what you have to use. So black vinyl fencing. But with this fence being under the allowed amount or allowed height for the service residential zone, there is no criteria to say that there has to be a visual element to this fence, that it couldn't just be a wood fence. If it was in like on the front yard of Carlton and Augustus, like we've done with other permits, we've ensured that, you still have that visual into the property. But with this fence being, typically on or technically on the sideline, there would be no requirements. If it was an 8.2 foot fence, then yeah, there would be requirements on the materials have to be used, but not in this case.
Okay. So I guess we can't.
all right, so the seconded motion stands. No further discussion. If you're ready for the question. All those in favor of approving the terms and conditions application for a 6'5" fence located within the front and flankage yards in the service residential zone for 158 Augustus Street with terms and conditions as described, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? No? There being none? That motion is carried. Are you abstaining? A soft aye, okay.
Thank you, Ms. Hartford.
Thank you. Good night.
Judy. Always nice to see you. Okay, that brings us to the end. Therefore, we have no sign applications, no new business. Any PAC member comments? At this time, we have no closed items, therefore at 8:24, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hey, Kevin.